All right, guys. So bell ringers up. Yesterday we talked about weapons of warfare. All right, during World War I. Anyway, so I want to review a few of these forms of weaponry. Again, your projects due Friday. Brody, man, he has it done already. Look at this guy. Anyway, so we'll do these presentations on Friday. And yeah, you good. You good. So if you haven't done so already, make sure that you choose whatever weapon you want to research and whoever you're working with, do discussion posts. Okay. So describe why World War I was considered the first technological war. Within your response, explain a few forms of technology, weaponry that saw its origins during World War One. Call it the first modern war as well, however you want to word it. But there's a lot of names to World War One. Thanks to that Industrial Revolution we talked about last chapter. There you go. The two ends. Sure, yeah, yeah. Dilly dilly. Jenna, what? Do I have to move you? No. You're staying there. Maybe you and Eli move you two.
Yeah, switch up.
Yeah. Why?
Sit behind Ben.
Are you friends anymore?
No, I like. Oh. Oh.
Joking, gosh. All right, here we go. Come on. Here we go. So World War One, first technological war, first modern war. Thanks to what revolution again? So at this moment, at this time, when you get to 1914, move it into obviously the length of the war, 1918. Okay, this is the second wave of the what? Austin? Industrial Revolution. Yes, the Industrial Revolution. Good job. So there's a lot of advancements happening all at once, right? I was going to finish off with a video here today with weapons of warfare and talk a little bit about the tanks, airplanes, submachine guns, you name it. And there's a good quote from it, which I'd like you guys to all write down. Right? When it comes to World War I, the soldiers, they came riding in on a horse and flying out in airplanes. So as 1914 started, there was, yeah, there's advancement, sure. But as the war goes on, right, you'll see a lot of jumps when it comes to advancements during any type of conflict, right? Especially during the Industrial Revolution, right? So with World War One, that was a good example of how, soldiers came riding on horseback and flying out in airplanes. We get to World War Two. Yeah, we'll develop a nuclear bomb. So yeah, you see these advances happening very quick, very fast through times of warfare. Because you want to try to gain that competitive edge, right? You want to try to access the newest form of technology to get you that advantage on the battlefield, right? Jet planes, obviously, so this is going to be a new direction. This one, yeah, in World War II. So we'll talk more about that when we get there. All right, real quick. So what do we got here? What new forms of weaponry did we mention yesterday with World War One? Give me one of them here, Jason. Yes, good job. So when it comes to any type of chemical warfare, mustard gas, chlorine gas, well, how does this work, Jason?
Basically, you try to, you throw to, road, you deploy the flowing gas in your trench.
Yep.
And then as they would breathe it in, it would kind of like, all their holes, like all their holes, basically, with it. So that when they're breathing in, all the oxygen and the life is being replaced with the water.
Yeah,
And they're drowning inside out.
good, right? So within any opening, so your mouth, your nose, right? There's a fluid in there, there's a lining, right? And as that gas interacts with it, it's going to create it more of like a watery substance and actually destroy it, eat it from the inside out, right? So as your esophagus is swelling up, right, even bleeding out of your mouth, out your nose, your ears, your eyes, right? That line within your nose, your mouth starts to really just kind of erode and fall apart, right? As that enters your lungs, same thing. That lining within your lungs starts to become really mush, right? And as it just drowns it inside out. So it's brutal. It's awful, right? They throw this chlorine and mustard gas out into no man's land, into trenches, into bunkers, in order to try to have that clear advantage, right? Whoever's researching it with their projects, you can kind of look up certain examples, experiences, firsthand accounts of the first encounter with chlorine, mustard gas, and how awful it really was. You gotta imagine, you just see this mist, right? It's fog, and it's like, oh, okay, no big deal, we'll run right through that. And then you just see everybody collapsing. Right, so with World War One, a lot of the pictures you do find online is soldiers, troops wearing gas masks. And again, this chemical warfare would be outlawed after World War One, which in all reality, it's not really, right? There's still uses of chemical warfare, even still to this day, which is very unfortunate. All right, what else we have? Luna,
Flamethrower.
yeah, flamethrowers, good job. Well, how would this work in World War One?
Basically, the guy would have like oil on his back, and some other men would be carrying this long tube, and the guy up front would be holding your actual gun that would be shooting flames or flaming oil,
Okay.
which they would be going out into no man's land and trying to like flush out anyone that was in no man's land by burning them.
All right, yeah, okay. So early on here, the flamethrower wasn't actually what you see in World War II, where you actually have a backpack, right? Where one person can operate it, right? And World War One, you needed a few guys to move this thing around like it was in a wheelbarrow or some sort of wagon, right? And as you can imagine, as you're trying to push this thing across the bunkers, the uneven soil, a lot of times mud of no man's land, this thing would not move very well. All right, obviously you need a few guys here too to hold up the hose. Right, as that's dragging along the ground, you gotta imagine there's sharp objects, there's rocks that could cut holes into that hose. So you can't let it just drag on the ground. Right, and also have that person in front, obviously aiming the flamethrower, right, as that flammable substance is hitting the flame, right, at the end of this weapon. To shoot it out in the bunkers, the trenches, right, into maybe foxholes out in a no man's land, right? So yeah, there's a lot going on here with flamethrower. All right, good. What else? What else did we talk about? Someone, oh, Chloe.
Okay.
Tanks. Yeah, good job. What do we know about the tank in World War One? What do we know? Lynn. Yeah, right. So as England was coming across the English Channel, they wanted to try to disguise it. They thought, hey, we can't let Germany see this new secret weapon. So they decided to encase it, right, in this box and say, oh, it's just water tank, right? That's what they had it labeled on the outside of the box. And all of a sudden, right, when you see the battle ensuing, starting, these tanks come flying in. Right, Ypres, the Battle of Ypres, which, we'll talk about a few battles, but this was one where you first see the tank. And were they very efficient? No, right? It often break down, right? So you gotta imagine this big hunk of metal. That's literally what they're moving across no man's land through the mud, right? Through the constant uneven surfaces from artillery shelling. These things were just not very efficient. Right? In other words, they were pretty much like a battering ram, right? They would make their way across no man's land and bust through barbed wire, right? And land inside the enemy trench. And that's where you see the soldiers following the tank, right? Invading into the trench. So more or less, they're just kind of like this big make shield, mobile shield. That was it. That was it. Yeah. So later in the war, the tanks become a little bit more efficient. And they realize real quick that they got to utilize them as a means for invading trenches, but also they got to make sure that the soil is dry, right? If there's any mud, forget, these things will just break down. They couldn't move through these types of terrains. All right, anything else here? What other weapons here? Someone new. Calvin, what else can we talk about? Airplanes, perfect, good job. What do we know about airplanes during World War One?
What's that great? Except for the red coats.
The Red Baron, yeah, okay, good. So early on in the war, yeah, not very efficient, right? I know I talked a little bit about the structure of the plane. It was just this heavy canvas. It's not like it had armor on it, so you really couldn't protect the plane too much from incoming fire. Right, their speeds were about 100, 130 miles per hour. And when it came to shooting a machine gun on it, well, there was actually kill switches to the engine, which would cut it, so you could shoot through, right, where that turbine was going. You could time it up, right? But the engine would have to be killed. So there you are flying, and then all of a sudden you're shooting at the enemy, but your engine goes, and you think that engine would ever pop back on. Sometimes it's designed to do that, but sometimes not. Right? So these airplanes were, well, towards the end of the war, pretty efficient, right? And that advancement will continue on when we get more towards World War II. But early on, not the greatest. Right, what were these fights called up in the air between planes, trying to protect these Zeppelins or, I don't know, even trying to take down a Zeppelin? Chase, dog fights, yeah, good job. All right, if we have some time, I'd like to show the movie Fly Boys. Like to? Movie? Huh? Maybe? We'll see. So we'll see. If we have some time. Is there anything else we can talk about? Luna,
Machine guns.
machine guns, yeah, good job. So we're talking more about lightweight machine guns, submachine guns. How they start to be developed, be a little bit more versatile in the trenches. So you can get around these tight corners, these areas of the trench where if you had a heavy machine gun, forget about making it across no man's land. The thing's too big, too bulky, right? And not even maneuverable enough to move around in the trench. So light machine guns start to see their appearance. Also, when it comes to heavy machine guns, right, some of these are becoming more adapted, that they have better cooling systems so that the machine gun wouldn't overheat. A lot of times, you ever play any old games of World War One, a lot of times they have water there to pour on the barrel, make sure it's cooled down so that the barrel just won't break apart or bend in different directions as it's overheating. So yeah, things start to advance a little bit more during the conflict. All right, so we're gonna move on here today. I do have a few terms, not a lot, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about the United States, where they're at. Okay, where they're at. Here we go. Yep, there we go. All right. So we got Woodrow Wilson, immigration, isolationism, and Americanization. Okay, there you go. There you go. So we are going to talk a little bit about immigration today, just because, well, we are a nation of immigrants. And as the world is exploding into warfare, well, you might have populations from different areas, different countries. You got to be cautious about that. Because if you join the wrong side, what could happen internally? Huh? What could happen? You see a lot of riots, right? You see a lot of rebellions. You see a lot of actors going against the government's direction in this war. So this is the first year for us that we're experiencing where we don't know what side to choose. So we've got to be cautious of our population. Right? We are, again, a nation of immigrants. We could really anger a lot of people that could rise up against the government internally if we choose the wrong side. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. I'll mention about some of the perspectives of Americans as we're getting closer and closer to being involved in this war. All right, big thing to remember here, the United States won't enter World War I until what year? When? Yeah, good job, 1917. Good, good. So, as you can imagine, well, there's a lot of war going on before we even step foot on the battlefield. And as we step foot, the war kind of comes to a close pretty early. So we'll mention about our progress, our involvement, and yeah, how that went for us. All right, so you got to wonder, the United States, let's face it, we started this second wave of the Industrial Revolution along with Germany, but we're not involved yet. And there's a lot of reasons why. One of the biggest reasons is, well, what do you think? Why do you think the United States is taking a back seat here to this war? Why don't we just get involved right away? What's the reason? Well, if you look at a map, there's a clear reason. Jason?
Isolationism, giant thing that is the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, good job, right? So when you think about the United States, we are separated from a lot of these countries around the world. When you think about Europe, especially the Atlantic Ocean, right? We're not right up against it. Right? These other countries in Europe, well, unfortunately, Right, as you share a border with someone that's maybe belligerent, that maybe be aggressive or building up their military, you got to build up your military too. You got to be careful, right? Again, the United States was building up their military right around the same time. We were embracing imperialism right around the same time as these other European countries. We're going a different direction, sure, but what protects us and keeps us separate from the rest of the world is the Atlantic Ocean. Right, same thing here with Asia, right? We have the Pacific Ocean separating us from Asia. So yeah, when you think about geographically, you can't pick a better spot to be in the world, right? We have really a lot of the resources we need right here at home, right? We are large enough when it comes to our, again, raw materials and resources, but also protection, right? We have two massive oceans here separating us from many of the dangers and aggressive nations, right, of the world. So, in other words, just looking at the map, that's a clear reason why we can stay out of a lot of these conflicts. All right, so where do we begin here? Well, the United States, at the point of World War I, many people wanted to try to stay out. Some people wanted to get involved. Right, when you get down later down the road with Mr. Shutt, you'll talk about Teddy Roosevelt. We mentioned him here already. All right, we talked more about him during that Industrial Revolution chapter. Well, he got a lot of his background from the Spanish-American War. And, well, building up the military. So with Teddy Roosevelt, he saw this opportunity for the United States to show their place, right? And if you want to rise as a world power, you got to win some wars, right? So Teddy Roosevelt, who was president of the United States before, right? He was trying to prompt the United States to get involved early on because, well, we're protectors of free speech. We're protectors of the Enlightenment, right? Remember that Enlightenment period we talked about? Yeah. These philosophers that had all these great ideas, right? Our government is for the people, by the people. And all of a sudden you see these countries in Europe, well, trying to push for authoritarianism, right? If Germany, right, if this empire here that is authoritarian at the time, if they defeat all of Europe, well, who's next? Us, right? So we got to be careful, right? We got to make sure that that war stays over in Europe, right? So these are ideas bouncing around. At the same time, like I just mentioned, we do have an ocean separating ourselves from Europe. So do we have to get involved? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, these are three perspectives that I would like you to know, right? And as we're moving here into the conflict, yeah, the United States is going to get involved. We already know that, right? It's inevitable, but all right, it takes a long time for us to do so. All right, so three different groups. Number one, isolationists, which I just talked about. Right, there's no reason why we need to get involved in this war in Europe. All right, there is no concern, right, when it comes to sharing a border with these European countries. Right, we're so far separated. Why get involved? Okay, yeah, we have some territories and areas of lands that we conquered, that we imperialized, that are butting up against some other European powers. Sure, we did. Sure. Right, so maybe that's where you can kind of have that argument against some of these isolations. But when you think about our mainland, we are so far separated. So stay out of the war. So isolationist, you're isolating yourself. You're keeping yourself separate from the conflict, from the issues. All right, interventionist. Okay, so join the war with the allies. Support our friends. So with the interventionists, they see this as an opportunity to raise ourselves, to elevate ourselves to become a world power. And that's what I was talking about earlier with Teddy Roosevelt. He said, hey, here's our opportunity. We've been growing our military for a long time here now. And, well, if we don't get involved now, this war could trickle over to our mainland, right? Do we want that? No, right? We don't want to see our cities destroyed. We don't want to see trench warfare here in the Western Hemisphere, in the United States. We don't want that at all, right? In order to try to keep that war from our border, from our land, we got to get involved over in Europe, stop it from getting over. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of people that supported it. And Teddy Roosevelt was a very successful president. So as we're shifting, right, as we're moving into different presidencies, different administrations, right, a lot of people look back at that previous administration and said, you know what, he might be right. He might be right. So interventionists, they want us to get involved right away. And they want us to get involved right now. If we don't, that war might drag on over to our country. All right, support our friends. Here's where the question comes out, right? So, which we'll talk about here in the next slide. Yeah, we speak English. Okay, so that's one thing, right? When you think about the foundations of our government, do we take a lot from England? Yeah, we did, right? You think about the Bill of Rights. Yep. The Magna Carta, mentioned about that, huh? That was an influence way back when. When you think about this parliament, right? Parliament, I know our Congress is a little different, but for the most part, it's a representative democracy. So when it comes to government structure, language we speak, and a lot of our heritage or a lot of our lineage, England would be one of the reasons why we joined on the Allied side. Right? France, did they help us with our revolution? Yeah, they did against England, funny enough. But France would also be a key ally that we need to support, that we need to help. We won that revolution without them? Probably not. So it's one of those things where maybe we support them too. And finally, well, we do have a big immigrant population. Okay, and that came from Germany, especially here in central PA. So a lot of you probably can think back to your family tree, your heritage, your lineage, and say, you know what, I'm part German, okay. And there was a big group, still big group of German ancestry here in Pennsylvania and parts of the eastern parts of the United States. So you gotta be careful. All right? A lot of the people there, even though they left Germany, still have support and a connection to them. So that's a there. All right, last one. Internationalists. So internationalists, kind of hypocritical, okay? And there's a reason for it. Number one, they want to see the war come to an end. Peaceful negotiations, right? Obviously, warfare is not good. You don't want to see the world burning. Okay, and you can kind of compare this to where we're at today with the Russia-Ukraine war. Actually, yesterday, for events, yesterday, we had some meetings between Russia and the United States, trying to talk over maybe a peaceful end to it, maybe a ceasefire. We'll see. It's just the beginnings of it. But hey, we finally see some progress towards talking, right? We haven't seen that for 3 long years. So anyway, internationalists want to see this war come to an end. But, right, this is where the double-edged sword comes. We continue trade with European nations. So not just to France and Great Britain, but also to Germany, right? So in other words, we see this as an opportunity, and this is the route we take, right? So we see this as an opportunity, growing as growing as an industrial power, growing as this ability to produce goods, materials, military weapons, and giving them to these European nations, right? So, well, continue our industrial growth while the whole other industrial areas in the world destroy each other, right? Who's going to be the only one left standing? Who's going to be the only industrial power left standing? Jason? US. United States. So even though we're saying peace, we kind of want these countries just to tear each other apart, okay? And at the same time, aiding, funneling weapons, ammunition, supplies over to these countries, making a large sum of money off of it. So yeah, say peace, but in all reality, we don't want that at all. We want these European nations, these industrial powers, to destroy each other while we make a quick buck off of it, right? And after it's all said and done, we're the only industrial power left. So without even getting involved, we'll be number one. Okay, so that's kind of the route we take. And we'll mention it when we get to World War II. Right, there's going to be neutrality acts, laws, policies passed by Congress to prevent us from getting involved in this type of situation. So remember how this goes down for World War I. When we get to World War II, there's going to be neutrality acts that prevents us from getting involved in this type of situation. Right? It gets a little sticky. All right, so with that, like I mentioned, well, Wilson realizes that we are a melting pot. We got to be careful, right? And we go down this kind of weird stage as we get involved in the World War I, where we try to weed out German heritage, German language, German culture from the United States. Right? Pennsylvania Dutch is a real thing. So you gotta imagine a lot of people around this area were really affected by this. And we'll talk more about that down the line when we get more to the espionage and sedition acts. But I just want to kind of present that in your mind. Right? We have a large population of German Americans. So we got to be careful. So you can see why maybe Woodrow Wilson was like, here's this opportunity to grow as an industrial power. We want peace, but at the same time, we don't want to tear our country apart from the inside out. We join one side or the other. How about we just stay out of it and become this wealthy industrial power? So he kind of takes that internationalist approach, okay? All right, so he takes the advantage, obviously trade with both sides. So if you're, let's say, the Allied powers, well, can you see us as a friend then? If you're actually giving armaments and weapons to Germany, if you're the Central Powers, you see us as a friend if we're giving weapons and armament supplies to the Allied powers. So, are we making any friends here? No, they're just depending on us for supplies and military armaments. They can't see us as a friend, they can't see us as an ally. So that's a problem, and we'll find that out here real quick. All right, so again, US neutrality, well, what is it? Well, US neutrality is just trying to stay out of these conflicts, stay out of this war. Again, we're across that body of water, right? The pond, as they say, right? And we don't need to get involved right away. But if we don't, maybe that war will drag on to the United States. So there's a lot of questions, right? There's a lot of concerns. And if you think about this war in Ukraine today, a lot of people are divided on it. Do we continue to support it? Do we continue to send military armaments to Ukraine? Boy, oh boy, we're really struggling to pay for groceries and gas. So maybe that money could be used elsewhere on us, the American people, right? So there's a lot of concerns here that you can relate it to, Curtis. One more time, Curtis, right? To this time period. So perfect. All right, anyway, there's a good political cartoon. Emphasizing here, there's the Hun. Oh, so we'll talk about the German Hun. That's what the name they gave him. And you can see how aggressive he is. He looks like he's about ready to beat down the woman and her child, which is to show innocence. Lady Liberty, maybe, who knows, right? And how Europe is all in destruction, burning up. You can see the crosses in the background. And then Uncle Sam's just watching. So you gotta imagine the Allied powers, France, Great Britain, even Russia, right? They're looking at us for help, begging us for help. Okay, last thing here I will mention, and this is really summing up what we just talked about. So I already mentioned about this already. When it comes to the United States, we were very hypocritical. We were two-faced in how we dealt with this situation, right? We wanted peace, but man, here's a great opportunity to make money. Here's a great opportunity to let the world destroy themselves, and we're the only ones standing. Why? Well, again, those two oceans that separate us from the rest of the world. That's perfect. It's a natural means of defense. Just being that far separated, even still to this day, is a great means of defense. Yeah, I know there's missiles out there, long range missiles, but overall, still gives us the opportunity to stay separate from a lot of the conflicts, a lot of the issues in the world. Anyway, here you go. Here's a good political cartoon emphasizing what I just talked about. So there's Uncle Sam. On the front says peace on earth, goodwill towards men. So meaning, let's see an end to this war. We don't want to see this war continue on. This is ugly, it's terrible. A lot of the American people are hearing about it, but still, this American pride is running deep in their veins. Right? When we get involved, a lot of the men that get involved think it's a game. That we can just go over there and just whoop some butt and come home. That's not how it's going to go down. We'll find that out pretty quick. Right, but on the backside here, so as he's turning around, right, obviously there's another side to this, right? There's a flip side to it. So here, war ammunition for sale, orders filled promptly, meaning we can make some money off it. Right? So can anybody trust us? Can anybody trust us? No, they can't. And this puts us in a very bad situation. We don't have any allies then, right? But I guess we're kind of the piggy bank for the rest of these countries to destroy each other. So when we get to World War II, remember the situation, remember it, because when we get to World War II, Congress is gonna do everything they can to prevent this from happening again. All right, because ultimately, we get involved in World War I. So it's gonna be somewhat of a similar situation. All right, is there any questions, guys? All right, you guys have a few minutes here. Sorry, I tried to finish up a little bit earlier. I didn't think it'd take this long. But please work on your projects. Again, Friday, I like to do the presentations. You guys want me to go over it again with you, or are you good? What we're looking at, yeah?